everyone, welcome. All right, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the Smithsonian for an evening of discussion and performance with internationally acclaimed group, A Tribe Called Red. I'm Meredith Holmgren, staff member of the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, and I also serve as the principal investigator and manager of the Smithsonian's pan-institutional project on living traditions called Intangible Cultural Heritage. As the world's largest museum and research complex, the Smithsonian is committed to supporting the sustainability of cultural heritage and diversity in communities in the United States and around the world. While the Smithsonian is perhaps best known for its vast collection of material art and artifacts, the institution is also a thriving force for cultural work concerning performance, music, traditional knowledge, languages, storytelling, often collectively referred to as living traditions or intangible cultural heritage. And in addition to this, as many of you know, the Smithsonian has a long history of acting as a resource for the hemisphere's Native communities and serving the greater public as an honest and thoughtful conduit to Native cultures, both present and past, in all their richness, depth, and diversity. Based in Ottawa, Canada, A Tribe Called Red produces an innovative fusion of traditional and contemporary Aboriginal sounds, along with an eclectic mix of electronic music and sampling. Their work adapts and recontextualizes traditional forms of cultural expression, such as powwow music, to capture the innovation and dynamism of contemporary arts. In doing so, the group has become the face of an urban Native youth renaissance, championing their heritage and speaking out on Aboriginal issues while being on top of popular music, fashion, and art. In a music industry that's famous for compartmentalizing artistic genres and promoting a monolithic view of Indigenous peoples, A Tribe Called Red has refused to be pigeonholed. In 2014, they consciously chose not to submit their music to the Juno Awards Aboriginal Music category and instead took home awards for Breakthrough Group of the Year and Electronic Album of the Year. It marked the first time that an Indigenous act had won an award outside of the Aboriginal music category. In anticipation of their concert this evening, we're delighted to have the opportunity to speak with members of A Tribe Called Red on this discussion panel. Tonight's events are co-presented by the Smithsonian's Intangible Cultural Heritage Project, the National Museum of the American Indian, and the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. Many thanks to the hard work and dedication of staff and volunteers from all of our presenting units, especially to the staff of the National Museum of the American Indian for being such wonderful hosts. Additional thanks should be accorded to the Smithsonian Associate Smithsonian at 8 Division for their cooperation in promoting this evening's program. And last but not least, special thanks to the Smithsonian's Grand Challenges Consortium for the Humanities for contributing to the sponsorship of tonight's program. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guests. On stage, we have all members of A Tribe Called Red, including Bear Witness, Ian Campeau, aka Deejay NDN, and Timothy Hill, aka Toolman. The discussion will be moderated by Sojin Kim, who is a curator of the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage.
And thank you everyone for coming out. It's great to see all the people out here, although it's a little bit blinding, I must say. You guys okay?
Yeah, fine.
All right, so thank you to Meredith. Thank you again to the museum for all that they're doing. But huge appreciation to the guys from A Tribe Called Red, because not only are we going to have this great concert later on today, but we are really, really excited that they were agreeable to having us come and talk with them before they go on later today. And the idea here is that before kind of jumping into the very energetic fray of their show, we wanted to have a moment to talk about the ideas, the issues, the experiences that really motivate you in the work that you do with A Tribe Called Red. And so this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to start out with a few questions and get the conversation going. But about halfway through, we're going to switch. We have mics at the back of the room, and we're going to actually ask to take questions from the audience. We really want this to be a conversation that includes all of you as well. So that's what we are planning to do here. And actually, you know what? It would be kind of good to get a sense of who we have here. So I guess one question is, how many of you have actually seen A Tribe Called Red play live? All right, so there's a good amount out here. Let's see, how many people here have downloaded or streamed songs from their albums? There's a good amount there. And then, let's see, how many people are not from the DMV, the District, Maryland, Virginia area? How many people came from outside? All right, where did you guys come from?
North Carolina.
Woo, wow. Anyone else come further than that?
Ohio.
What, Ohio? What? Wow.
What was that one?
All right, so this is good news, because this is a good audience then.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're
yeah,
among friends. This is going to be a good... Baltimore that doesn't count. But that's good. So this will be a good conversation. People who really... That's...
Right.
Oh yeah, how many people from Canada? How many people here from Canada? So we got a few. What else you want to add? Anything else we want to ask them before we... Anything else we want to know about them? All right, we'll find out when you guys come up to the mic. I just wanted to say one last thing before we get started. I wanted to just emphasize something that Meredith talked about in terms of this event, A Tribe Called Red, and the Smithsonian, and how it relates to the work we do here at the Smithsonian, and specifically to the work of our colleagues here at the National Museum of the American Indian, but also their staff that work across the Smithsonian in many different units who are dealing with these issues of cultural heritage and living culture. The Smithsonian is made up of about 19 museums and research centers, a zoo, and we have staff who are working and dealing with issues of culture from many different angles. So, we work in the Asian Pacific American Center, the Smithsonian Latino Center, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of Natural History, American History. There's a bunch of art museums, and we're all working from different angles. We have different academic, disciplinary backgrounds. We represent different cultural communities. We're engaged in different types of social networks. So we're really coming at the issue of culture in a lot of different ways, but I think what we all share that's really important, and I hear it in the work that you guys do, is this understanding that culture is serious business, right? That culture and heritage and tradition aren't peripheral, they're not frivolous, they're not things that kind of are old and static and sit to the side, but that they're really integral to our lives, right? What we do today. And culture is also wrapped up in politics, it's wrapped up in economy, it's wrapped up in power, authority, issues of community, identity, and even in health. The well-being of community is very tied up in culture. And so we are really, really honored to have you guys here today because I think that you really deal with these issues in really provocative and smart, creative ways. So it's great to be able to have you bring your ideas to the table about this. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
So I just wanted to throw that out there to help anchor part of this conversation. But to get started, I thought that really easy, if we could just go one by one, if you guys could introduce who you are, where you're from, and help people get a sense of where you're coming from and how that really is what shaped what A Tribe Called Red is, how it's changing, what it does.
Mm-hmm. My name is Ian Campeau. I'm from Ottawa. My home community is Nipissing. I'm Ojibwe. I'm also known as Deejay NDN in A Tribe Called Red.
Scano Seguego. My name's Tim Hill. I go by the name Tool Man. I'm a producer, engineer, musician, kind of guy like that. From Six Nations.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mohawk Six Nations.
Just gotta throw that Mohawk in there.
Yeah. Gotta do it.
My name's Bear Witness. I grew up, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, but you got that weird "where are you from" question, and when you get asked in Indian countries, I gotta say I'm from Six Nations, like Tim, but I grew up in Toronto. So that's where my family mostly is. But I've been living in Ottawa for about 15 years now.
So I was kind of hoping you guys would say a little bit more about where you're coming from. But I will prompt you with questions, because I think that's my role. But talk a bit about A Tribe Called Red. I mean, there's a lot of music writers, there's your fans, a lot of different people have a different way of describing what you are, what you do. I want to hear how you describe what you do and where that comes from.
Bear came up with a really good term for what we're doing, and it's cultural continuance. And it's the idea that just because we're using technology doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that we're doing something traditionally. Singing songs and making songs has been a part of our culture forever, and just because we're using technology to do it doesn't make it any less of our culture. So like hunting has always been a part of our culture, but because we're using a rifle doesn't make it any less part of our culture. So so it's more of a cultural continuance is a great term that Bear came up with.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I came up with it or repeated it or heard it somewhere. But I think what you can really break down A Tribe Called Red and like what inspired us to do what we're doing by looking at lack. And initially there was a lack, a space made in the club scene in Ottawa when the big club night that had been the big club night for about 7 or 8 years before us had ended. So there was that lack of the big night. There was an opening for us to jump in, being a bunch of working DJs in the city. But also, the reason that we came together in this group was because we saw a lack of events for urban Indigenous people. And that there wasn't, you could go to a film screening, or you could go to an artist talk, or you could go to a rally, you could go to the Friendship Center, the Native Friendship Center. You could do all these kind of things. But there wasn't a space within the club environment. There wasn't that space that was specifically for Indigenous people to have fun. And that we wanted to fill that space. We saw an opportunity to say, let's create a party, let's create a club night, and direct it towards the Indigenous community of Ottawa. And the response was much, much larger than anything we would have expected. To us, it was an opportunity to come together as Indigenous DJs. But the response from the community, I mean, our first night sold out. We packed the house, and it was one of those really magical club nights. There was no fights, there was no disagreements, everybody got along. But everybody showed up too. It wasn't just Native people. We had directed it towards the friendship centers and the Native Students Associations and those kind of places. But we made this event to be inclusive of Indigenous people, and everybody showed up. People from every community, from every background showed up, and to be a part of it, to see what was happening, but also with this idea that they wanted to support what we were doing. And the reaction from our community, from the Indigenous community was, you guys have to keep doing this now. We were kind of thinking of it was a one-off, just something we'd do once and see where it went. And everyone's like, you guys can't stop this now. It's like, we need this in our city. We need to have this space for us to come out and enjoy ourselves, and for it to be okay for us to enjoy ourselves with other Indigenous people, with the larger community of Ottawa, but just have it be okay. And I think that's not even something that I put together right away. It was something that a friend of ours said to us much, much later, a couple of years ago. And she said, you guys made it okay for us to come out and party and have a good time. When, like I said, you could go to a protest, or you could go to the Friendship Center and do all these sort of things that were okay. And we were making it okay for the Indigenous people of Ottawa to come out and enjoy themselves.
Mm-hmm. There was another response too that was like, I grew up in that community. I grew up in the Ottawa Indigenous community, and like Bear said, it was sold out, and I didn't recognize anybody. So it was a big, it was really off-putting. Like, who are these Indians? What's going on? You know what I mean? And what it turned out to be was students coming from Canada's really, really big, and there's tons of rural communities way, way up north. So these kids were coming from rural communities and coming to Ottawa and having this culture shock, and not knowing everybody in the city is a big culture shock to these communities of 300-400 people. And we created this space where they were able to see other people like them within the city that they were having this great culture shock in, and made it safe for them. Like it created the space, and that's what a lot of those students were saying, was that you can't stop this because we have this space now where I feel comfortable for the first time. That was a big thing too.
How did you frame, what did you call it, Electric Powwow the first time around? And what were you spinning? What were you playing at that first?
Just club music.
Yeah, we didn't have any we didn't really have any powwow music or anything yet. That didn't come till later.
Yeah, it was actually not our remixes of powwow music that we first played. It was another group, it was a French group actually, who came out with a song with MIA and Santa Gold. And it had a powwow sample in it. And I had heard other things like techno music and stuff that had tried sampling powwow in the past, and it felt like an appropriation. For some reason, this one felt all right to us, and we played it at the powwow, and everyone was really all right with it. And it was that, okay, so if everyone's all right with this track, I think we can do this now. You know, there was a real hesitation. I mean, I'm still, like, you know, in the early years especially, I was like waiting for that person to come up and say, okay, you guys got to stop.
This is not okay.
This is not okay. You know, the people, you know, this is against traditions. You're not respecting protocols or all those sort of things. And no one ever stopped us with that yet, anyways. and you know, being responsible to protocols and culture is something that is very, very important to us. But pushing boundaries is really important to us too. And we're pushing boundaries, you know, with non-Indigenous people to say, look at us, interact with us. Here's our culture, and you know, look at it for once.
Yeah, check it out.
See us, kind of thing. But when we're also talking about Indigenous people, we're pushing our own boundaries and our own comfortabilities, and with as much respect as we can do, and still be able to push those boundaries.
Can you guys, I guess continuing along those lines, can you talk about the idea of tradition and what it means to you and how you are engaging with it? If you feel that you are, maybe you don't.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was raised with my culture and with my traditions, and it's something that's always at the core of things I do. It's what I find guides me, but at the same time, finding ways to adapt all of that traditional knowledge to our lives today. And I think that's a big part of A Tribe Called Red was saying that it's time, and it's actually not just us. We're kind of the ones in our little corner of the world doing it. But right around the same time that we started doing this in 2010, I started seeing it from Indigenous people all over the world. And this light kind of turned on with people where they said, okay, it's time to start sharing again. It's time to find ways to get our culture out there again, to be seen, to be included, all of those things. It seemed to be time.
We weren't afraid that it was going to get taken away again, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the...
There was just, it was this light, it was this moment, and through the years that we've been doing stuff, I've just seen it more and more. That, you know, it's a timing thing. It's a moment. There was a moment that we grabbed, and again, that's I think why we didn't get stopped and told what we're doing wasn't right, was because it came at the right time.
Do either of you want to address the tradition point, or is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Well, yeah, like for protocol and stuff, like when we get our songs, we go with the drum group, and like we recorded with a drum group not too long ago, and you know, it has to do with like respect and getting the blessing of the songwriter so that we can use it, and like we make sure that no one else can use it without their consent, and like we've changed the way that music's kind of dealt with within like the Native community, and with drumming too. So it's really exciting, and it seems that it's catching on, and yeah, hopefully other drums work along those lines too.
I was going to ask that in terms of the sampling of powwow music. So do you take from existing recordings, or do you go and record also for things?
Well, there's just a couple methods, you know, like in the past, I believe the tribe used to sample from records, from all of like powwows, like Northern Cree and everything like that. But like this past time, we actually got in the studio with a drum group that we've collaborated from time, and then we just kind of we got to get everything that we wanted, so we can record acapellas separately. We can actually record the drum in a way that no one has ever kind of recorded a drum before, because it's kind of an unorthodox like instrument that's really hard. So we got to really experiment in a studio, comfortable studio setting, and like really got to mess around and really record something. So we for the new album that we're working on, a lot of it is like the acapellas being used, or being involved with the singers themselves and stuff like that. So it's like really collaborative on that end. And then also the drum group, or the drum label that we work with, what's it called again? Tribal Spirit. They send us, with that same method in mind, when they record other groups, they have acapellas, or they have drums. Or
yeah, when we first linked up with Tribal Spirit, they asked us, they were like, what do you want? And we're like, we need acapellas, so that we don't have to chop around those drums.
Right.
So they recorded acapellas for the first time, because typically within the drum community, it's recorded with a boom mic, and you're very proud on how good it sounds and how good you can make that sound just like that. So us recording them like a cappella and then the drums separate and doing all this, they were really like standoffish about it for a little while, but we eventually convinced them.
It's supposed to be like, with a power recording, it's supposed to be what you do live.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so no overdubs or
Yeah.
that kind of stuff that we were
Yeah.
trying to convince people to do.
Yeah. Which was cool because like we got to actually like record because usually the women stand beside the drum when they sing. We actually got them to record them separately
by
off to the side. So that was kind of cool. So we had just to have them separate from the actual vocal mixes and stuff. It's really interesting and really good. Taught us a lot about song structure and like how to structure songs and everything. And it gave us a lot of freedom to do a lot of things.
Who was the group that you worked with?
Black Bear.
Okay.
Yeah, they were hosts, right, at the gathering this year? Or was it
No,
last
I don't
year?
know last year. But I know
They were hosting last
But I
year.
know that one of their lead singers there. His name's Junior Ottawa. He won the hand drum contest
Yeah.
at
really
Gathering of Nations. Super good.
And so like in the early years, it was like we were just scavenging. Whatever we could find, you know, the hot powwow track on YouTube or, you know, just finding the ways that we could use existing music. And then this relationship with Tribal Spirit came along and really just kind of came along at the right moment. We got an email from the guy who runs the label and had a meeting with him. And when we were dealing with, previous to that, with all the songs we were sampling and trying to getting the rights to the songs, the record label that we were dealing with was a really old school record label that didn't necessarily see the value in what we were trying to do, but they also weren't in as much direct contact with their drums. So that made some really interesting calls for us. Again, we're talking about protocols, you know, going ahead with something where we thought the drum was okay, but the drum didn't get notified by the label, so they don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden we end up in this mess where we have crossed some protocol
Yeah,
lines
like, talk to
and
the
having to go
drums,
back
so,
and
yeah.
fix relationships with people because of that. So Robert from Tribal Spirit and Joywind, they stepped in and they said, we're this small record label, we work with about 10 drum groups, and everything on our label is responsible to the drum. It's all the money is split 50-50 with the drum and the label, and everything we do is with the drum's consent. So if you guys want to work with us, first thing we have to do is go and ask all our drums. You know, and right away from that moment, we're like, yes, okay, you're the right people for us to be working with. And that relationship grew and got to the point where Tim was saying, where we got to actually sit down and record with Black Bear and get to direct them a bit and start playing with different techniques. But previous to that, what Ian was saying, we asked for acapellas. And when we first started getting these split recordings we weren't in the studio then, Robert and Joywind were just sending them to us. And we were going through all the different tracks one day in the studio, just looking for new samples. We were working on our second album at that time. And we came through to a folder that had just the women vocals split, recorded on their own. And we all realized that we never, like, you know, you hear just women singers on hand drum songs or on different songs, but never just on a straight powwow song did we have just the women's voices. So that's where the song Sisters grew out of, because we had this opportunity to work just with the women's voices. So we're like, okay, let's make the song for the sisters.
Can you talk about Sisters, the song and the video and that collaboration? Because I think that's a really interesting piece.
Yeah. The video, the video was cool. We got approached by this director. His name's John Riera, really good dude. But he approached us with this idea of having some sort of like, okay, I want to have like Sky Woman come down and like this big thing. And we're like, well, what do you do, man? He's like, oh, well, I'm big on party videos. It's like, well, why don't you just make a party video? Right? So it was. So we just wanted to show Indigenous women getting ready to go to a party and come to our party, like the Electric Powwow, and that was the concept. And it was like this new revolutionary sort of way to show Indigenous women that wasn't this, you know, statistic. That wasn't this like sad thing. It was a positive thing with women being powerful and dancing and having a good time and smiling. So yeah, the video ended up awesome, and but it started off kind of funny. It was a good conversation.
But that same director, John Riera,
Riera.
he directed our second video as well, Suplex. Thank you. Which, you know, they've been amazing at Mad Ruck. That's the production company. And after the first video, we're like, okay, yeah, we can definitely work with these people. And the guy who, what did I just forget his name?
Oh,
Ruiz.
Ruiz, Ruiz,
Mauricio.
who runs the production company. He sent us, a whole bunch of treatments from all their directors. And again, we got a lot of these, wanting to tell the creation stories of all different nations rolled into one video, and or like these heavy statistic-driven videos, and like, the stuff that we don't put in our music, and we don't put in such a direct fashion. We like to really hit people sideways, come at things from different directions. So that was really not us. And we got to this one treatment, and it was just about a
Wrestling.
wrestler,
Yeah.
and this native wrestler coming up. And it turns out that it was John again. And he had the advantage of having spent a week with us already and knew what we were into. But then we find out that Ruiz is a wrestling fan, and all these guys are wrestling fans. So all of a sudden, it turned into this passion piece for everybody.
Yeah.
And for people who haven't seen that, can you describe that narrative that plays out in the video?
I guess the basic story is having a young Native man who goes to see wrestling, gets inspired to become his own wrestler, and the big thing was that like with wrestling, it always plays. If you're Native, then you're gonna have to be Tatanka
stereotype,
and wear a headdress and do all. So we wanted to have a wrestler who got to do it on his own. Just got to do it on his own, just his own way. And that's kind of what the story that it tells.
It was cool though. Like wrestling seems to appeal to most minorities in the way that they're represented in popular culture in no other way. So as Indigenous people, like me and Bear and Tim for sure, like grew up idolizing the Ultimate Warrior because that was the only representation that we had. The only positive representation was this extremely stereotypical and non-native person.
Right.
Like he was an Indian.
Right.
And that's all we really had to look up to, right? So, but we really did. And so wrestling has that.
Well, I mean, that's such an interesting turn of things, and the levels at which things are getting reinterpreted and reappropriated, because it's true, like among, ethnic minority communities, there's crazy stuff that goes on in wrestling that, if you're Asian, you're gonna have a Fu Manchu and be the villain. And, But it's true that somehow along those lines of stereotype, that identifications get formed, but I think that what you guys are doing is really interesting because of the way you play that back in different ways.
I think it just has to do with being sensitive to it and kind of throwing it back.
Well, I think with the wrestling thing, it's a lot about representation and inclusion. Being from a group that is underrepresented and continuously excluded from things. When you have those moments, especially in pop culture, to say, "Oh yeah, there's someone who looks like me there," then you really gravitate to that.
Yep.
And like when we talk about wrestlers, like there's kind of like WWF kind of wrestlers. Nobody talks about Tatanka. We had this Tatanka guy in the early 90s, late 80s. He ran around, he had like a red little
hair.
Mohawk thing and danced around like Kevin Costner in the ring. Nobody ever talks about that guy when we talk about wrestlers. Everybody talks about Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
But Ultimate Warrior, they never claimed to make him an Indian. It was never a part of his thing. But there was something about the energy of the Ultimate Warrior. There was something about it that all the particularly young Native men were attracted to. So like you'll see in our show today that we use the Ultimate Warrior in there because of that energy, because it was something that we made our own. And I think there's a lot of things through the media that we were, I don't know, I want to say forced to, or had no other choice to connect with. A character I talk about all the time is Billy from The Predator. Excuse me. And Billy he's like the classic Indian scout in The Predator. He has very few like full sentences, spends a lot of time rubbing his medicine pouch and staring off into the jungle, sort of guy. But in the movie, he's a really, really powerful character. Whenever Dutch, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, is in trouble, he turns to Billy. Billy, get me out of here. Billy goes toe to toe with the Predator and saves everybody's life by giving his own. And it's just, to me, as a young boy, I was like, okay, this movie is all about this guy, because he looks like me, but he's not getting put down in this movie. He's a really, really powerful person in this movie. So I made that connection with him, And so again, he's somebody that you'll see represented in our live show because of that feeling that I got when I was a child looking at him. And when I talked to a lot of other people, we made those same connections. So it's about finding ways to take the negativity out of some of those things and give it a new life and make it into something that makes us feel good, that makes us feel powerful.
Can you talk about your live performances, your shows, and the role of the dancing in it and video as well? You have a lot of stuff going on. Can you talk about everything that you pack into that experience?
Yeah, we have a dancer, James Jones, who he's incredible. Don't tell him I said that. But anyways, he's an amazing dancer, and he appealed to us to tour with us because he's also a b-boy. So he was doing the same thing with contemporary and traditional sort of things, and it just really worked with what we were doing. So yeah, that's James. I'll let Bear explain the video.
Yeah. Well, I think I think it's been part of what's made us successful is that we're DJs, so we stand behind a table.
Right.
And we look down at our hands a lot. You know? So having other things for people to interact with was really, really important.
Yeah.
So you have the dance part of it, where when we met James, he was already choreographing to our music and had already found this meeting point between powwow, dancing, and b-boy. So he was already doing what we were doing in dance, you know. So it was this perfect fit and just made sense for our show. And the same thing happened with the video. Before Tribe started, I already had a career in doing experimental video work. I do like installation work and that kind of stuff.
He was really famous. He was like world famous like video artist. If you look up his stuff, like way before Tribe.
But it was, again, just something, it was something that just made sense, you know, where I had been using a lot of music in my work before we started making our powwow remixes and stuff, and was trying to find, again, a lot like I was talking about with The Ultimate Warrior and Billy, and finding these connections through everything. I was doing the same thing with music, and trying to find these little connections through music that connected to what I wanted to say visually. We started making music. All of a sudden, I didn't have to look for those connections anymore. We were creating the connection. So to link my video work to our live shows was just kind of like a no-brainer. This is already what I'm doing. This is already what James was doing. We just kind of brought it all together, and so many things in our career have been like that, where it's just been at that time or that moment that we needed a dancer, so the dancer walked in. You know, we needed to do more than just play music. Well, here, I have these videos we can throw up while we play. And then they totally started like that. It was something that we did like just at our club night. You know, when we first started touring, we didn't tour with the video at all. And it was something that then people started asking for. And said, okay, well, if we're gonna hire you guys better bring that video thing that you guys do. The video, the whole part with the video allows us another interaction with the crowd. Like I said, like our music itself isn't political. We don't have a political message in lyrically or anything like that. The act of creating our music is political. The act of remixing our traditional culture, that is a political thing. But we're not out there saying, you know, this is what's racist or this is what is oppressive towards Indian people. We're creating a party. And the video can do that same thing. It can be something that's just there to enjoy or laugh at or whatever, but people are forced to interact with it in this way that they're not expecting, I think, because we are in this enjoyment club environment. You're hitting people from the sides, you're hitting people when they're not expecting it. And when I talk to non-Indigenous people who have been to our shows, one of the things that I've heard again and again is this idea where people have made connections through their own experiences to say things like, oh, that shot that you used from Back to the Future 3, you know, when Marty McFly is running into all the Indians, I loved that when I was a kid and it was so funny, but I realized that it's racist. The first time I heard that from somebody, this light went on and I was like, oh yeah. You know, you can realize that yourself. Like, I don't have to sit here and tell you that. and realizing the power of that tool was like, okay, that gave a whole new meaning to what we were doing.
So I'm going to just ask one more question because I want you guys to be able to ask something, but I want to also make sure that Tim comes into the conversation because Tim is a newer part of the whole mix here, and I want to ask you guys, how are things sort of changing, and in a way, what is something that Tim is bringing that's new to the whole way that you guys are doing things?
Yeah, Tim changed everything. I'm really excited for you guys to hear the new album. It's next level as far as I'm concerned, and it's all because of Tim. Tim is he's a well-accomplished producer, again, before Tribe, and you should talk more.
Wait, I'm going to tell you all about Tim.
No, you know what? Like just being involved with the group. Like I've known these guys for a while, and we were heavy in production on the new album before, and this was like the perfect fit for us, like to get to be involved and like touring with these guys. These guys are awesome to do. Like these guys are awesome. Like I get to perform with like two of the best DJs, So and then just being involved with this whole project has been amazing, and then and it gives me a chance to be creative in this form that we've been doing this, and it's just been pretty good.
And you weren't in Ottawa before, right?
Nope.
So you're also coming from a different place.
Yeah, too. Yeah. I grew up on Six Nations Reserve right up until I was 29. So I grew up on the reserve, and I started producing when I was 16. So I'm 31 now, so it's 17 years now. Yeah, and I've traveled everywhere, done everything, but I've done what I wanted in every other sense of music as far as this, and this is a brand new thing, and being involved this way is just awesome. And then I don't know if I was changing things like he's saying, but for the most part, I just want to to carry on what Tribe is doing and take another forward step, and then because it's Tribe is pretty. I think it's when I was a fan listening in, and how they were saying this is something you need to keep doing. That's exactly the same way that I felt. I felt very empowered, I guess, when I heard Tribe for the first time. And I was all right. Then I was already friends with them, so I was yeah, this is good.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
It's interesting. Tim was just saying he's 31 now, and that puts him at the youngest member of our group. Mm-hmm. But Tim joining the group really represents a maturing of our group. Tim coming in was really one of the first questions he asked. He was like, "So you guys don't party like that anymore?"
Yeah.
We were like, "No, man, no, we don't." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "All right, I can come on the road with you."
Yeah, that's good. That was good for me.
But that it seems like a funny point, but it was a huge turning point for our group, to say this is our career now. This is serious. We're not just club DJs who are running around the country having a good time. That we have something real that we're doing here. And before Tim joined the group, when we'd run into him mostly when we came to Winnipeg.
Right.
I always really admired his work ethic, and that he was somebody who was really serious about the work. And having him with us has really made us all up our game in that sense. Mm-hmm. And when it's time to work and get stuff done, we do. And he's a huge part of that.
And one thing too, I wanted to just add that these guys have pushed me, because these guys have been the database of music that both these guys these guys know is incredible, way more than I know. So they are teaching me a lot about every kind of music possible. So this has been a great big. So the new album is consisting of a bunch of stuff that I'm coming in. It's really a collective of everything, of every kind of music, everything, and it's just it's really exciting.
That's a perfect transition to turn it over actually then, and why don't we start taking some questions from the floor here. We have 2 mics in the back. If people want to get behind a mic, we'll alternate side to side. No way, how come no one's
Nobody?
Come on down.
Okay.
Well, I have a question while we're waiting for someone to get there. So, soundscapes. So what were you guys hearing when you grew up? What were you listening to in your house? What did you hear?
Michael Jackson. Yeah.
All kinds of music. My mom listened to a lot of Patsy Cline. My dad listened to a lot of Beatles. I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop and punk rock, and yeah.
Wow, what kind of music? Well, like around the house, there was just a lot of different cultural music in my house. You know, like my mom was a performer as well, and we grew up going to a lot of, you know, like WOMAD or WOMAX music festivals and those kind of things. There was always that going around. Powwow music, XIT.
Same thing with me, like same thing, cultural stuff. Like usually, I used to like sing, I still do, kind of. But yeah, social music and stuff like that. Yeah, Iroquois social music, and we'd have like stomp dances from like Oklahoma to like the stuff like that. And yeah, yeah. So like we would have like just every kind of Oklahoma music that we could possibly think of, and we'd just have my father would just put it on. That's what we listened to.
All right, we got people lined up now. Why don't we start on the right side? Yes.
Hey, what's up?
And tell us who you are.
Hello. Oh.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Everson. I run an organization called Ainu Pride Productions, which deals with the indigenous people of Japan, the Ainu people. Okay. And we've done some similar things, combining traditional Ainu music with modern music. And so my question was, I was wondering, you had mentioned earlier that you saw yourselves in a moment where there are other indigenous people around the world who were doing similar things that you were doing, and how much of their work impacted you, how much of your work has impacted them, and do you foresee any future collaboration with other indigenous people around the world?
Actually, we've already kind of started. Yeah, we've for the new album we have this artist, a Sami artist. Her name is Maxida Mohawk, I think. Yeah, they do this traditional yoiking style of singing, and we collaborated with her on a new song on the record,
And we have worked with Javier Estrada out of Monterrey, Mexico, who was again doing the same thing we were doing with traditional Mayan instruments and stuff like that. And yeah, we'd love to collaborate with him again, or anybody for that matter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely something we'd love to do more of. It's we're making connections all the time, and it's always that thing of, okay, yeah, we got to work together. Let's do something.
Yeah,
and then our tour takes us in opposite directions. But we were working on some stuff with a group from Australia called Oka, and hopefully we'll have some more collaborations with them coming in the future. But yeah, it's definitely something we're open to, more than open to.
Yeah. Well, what's really cool, what's opening this up is we meet all these indigenous people from all over the world, and you realize that the colonial experience is shared. Like the colonial, there's like a checklist to colonialism, and the powers come and make sure that every, residential school, check, and all right, here we go. So,
pipeline.
Yeah, pipeline and resource extraction. It's all shared. So we all have these things that we relate on, and what's the word I'm looking for? Traumatic, generational trauma from residential schools and stuff like that is again experienced with the Sami people, with the Australian people, the indigenous people of Australia, and so it's really interesting, and would love to connect and have more discussions like that and put more of that out there.
Yeah, with the connection, there's usually a collaboration that follows. Usually. When we make it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We go to the other side.
Hi. So my name is Zakiya Iman Jackson. I'm an English professor. So first I just wanted to thank you. I really appreciate what you were saying about not seeing being critical in opposition to being fun. That's really inspiring for me. I'm not very good at that, but I want to get better at that. And I really appreciate what you were talking about in terms of the re-aestheticization and re-narrativization of stereotypes and racist imagery. That's super interesting, and I appreciate that. So my question is just about the ways that indigenous people are constantly asked to labor under the sign of the traditional, so some static sense of traditional are the authentic. And actually my question kind of follows the one that came before. So part of what goes along with that is the assumption that innovation and creation only comes from contact with colonial powers, right? So colonialism is what, stirs the indigenous person out of their like static traditional rightness. And so I'm wondering what are some of the intra-indigenous dynamics that stir innovation and creativity and generate new things coming into your work that come from indigenous people themselves, as opposed to just contact with colonialism. So,
Well, one thing that makes it really difficult is that we didn't get that opportunity. We didn't get that opportunity to develop as indigenous people without contact getting in the way. There's a really amazing quote from, I always forget his last name, Cliff, I want to say Richardson? No. But he's a Maori actor. Curtis? Cliff Curtis?
Curtis, yes.
Thank you. Where he said he was talking about colonialism, and it was amazing to hear an indigenous person come up with a positive from colonialism. And he talked about colonialism as a pendulum. And this pendulum has swung all the way to this side, and what that's done is it's introduced us. The pendulum of colonialism has introduced us all to one another. And we've all said hello, and we all know each other now. And now we can interact. And as the pendulum swings back now, we have to remind ourselves to be human again and to treat each other as human again. So looking at it that way, it's hard to say where things would have gone without the interruption of colonialism. And like Ian was saying, that startup point where we find our connection with other indigenous people is again always that there's colonialism. That's where the interaction or the connection that comes in those interactions. And then after that, immediately what follows that is the other things that we have in common. Oh, you have a way of smudging yourself as well. You have a way of dancing like this. You dance at this time for this reasons, and so do we. So we find those I guess pre-colonial similarities as a result of that initial colonial connection.
Yeah. And you're speaking English with them too,
Yeah.
because of that, because of colonialism.
So I think it's really hard to take the colonialism out of it. In the end, I mean, we're kind of all stuck in the middle of it, trying to navigate our way around. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
I wasn't saying that taking colonialism out of it, but the ways that dynamics between indigenous people stir innovation and creation, as opposed to it just being a response to things that are seen as non-traditional, non-Western. So, like, the art is moving, but it's moving not just because of interaction with like Western colonialism, but also things that indigenous people are producing themselves that are stirring the art.
Yeah.
Stirring creativity.
Like there's I don't know if this is what you mean, but there's a Mohawk singer in Ottawa that lives right now where she's singing songs with rattles, and it's all in Mohawk, but it's new.
And it's like bluesy.
She's got a blues like sound to her voice, and she's singing. It's a beautiful song. She's talking about her baby and like how much she loves her, and it's a song. It's done at a really different speed of rattle that's not really traditional to us, but but she's singing and it makes total sense. Even the timing is real different and everything like that. I know this because like I was working on something with it, and then I was just like the timing's really different. And it was teaching me about timing with her and stuff. So like stuff like that always happens where like especially with powwow music, it's not your 4/4/8 timing bar. It's not something. There's definitely some 12.5 bar things going on, and there's some weird things that happen in music. But like it teaches us like how to. It changes the way that we think about how we do things as well. So yeah, like a lot of that stuff. And these are all innovations within things. Like there's still new songs being developed. There's still new everything being still done. Like it's going very well out there.
I gotta still process your question a bit. It's got me thinking. No, it's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a real good question.
It's a really good question. It's got me really thinking. So thank you.
And over on the right then.
Hi, I'm Chinese, and my name is Melissa Lynn. And I wanted to say, I think, well, first of all, I'm about to get very, very serious, so I apologize in advance for getting so serious. But I'm aware, because I've been through it myself, I'm aware that there's a lot of depression and suicide in Native communities and Indigenous communities around the world. And I don't want you to underestimate how important you are to Indigenous people everywhere. I want you to know you have probably saved many lives by the work that you're doing. So I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you to keep it up.
My name is Tess Blade, and I don't have an elaborate question, I just have a question for you.
Okay.
I came across a young man yesterday who is a mixed martial artist, and he was actually listening to your music as an intro song. So I told him I was coming here to see you, and my question is, how does someone go about getting the right to use your song as an intro song for a mixed martial artist?
I mean,
I can give you an email.
Yeah,
to the person to talk
yeah.
to you. I can give you an email to our manager, and he'll work it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, hello. Please feel free to answer me not in English or in English. My question is, what, as a group, you have decided to propel the initiation of Indigenous Day in your local communities? Just like in the state of Washington, replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Day. If that's important as a holiday to keep it, or to propel change on a moment-to-moment basis.
I've always, really loved in Australia that Indigenous people there celebrate Yabin on Australia Day, and Yabin is translated to survival. So they celebrate Survival Day on the national holiday.
On the day that everybody celebrates colonialism.
And I love that. Like that was, and I really have taken that to heart. And to me, that's what Canada Day means now. We performed on Canada Day not too long ago, and it was kind of really weird for me. I was like, why do they have us playing Canada Day? It just doesn't exactly make sense to me, but it makes sense to them. Okay. And in the way that I reconciled it for myself was I explained that. I said, let's celebrate our survival through this on Canada Day. That's.
I'm all for Columbus Day being changed to Indigenous Day. Any chance of us getting more, being seen more, I guess, and not being labeled as scary, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And there's a question on this
I don't know
side.
if that answered your question.
Yeah, it's.
Hello, I'm Mary Lynn, and I work here at the Smithsonian and
Hi,
in
Mary.
the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. And I'm really interested in your ideas of continuity and change with culture, especially in relationship to language. And I'd like to have you just talk about how you use language, and it could be Indigenous languages or your use of English, but your ideas of language with what you do.
Languages. Well, Tim is the only one that speaks his own language within a tribe called Red. Our tour manager speaks Mohawk as well, but I don't speak Ojibwe other than a few words, unfortunately.
But the music itself, there is some words that incorporate language in it, and we put it in there. Like we have that, I don't know, for Kakayo, talks about picking up the bread.
But yeah, I guess like in English too, when we describe Indigenous people in Canada, especially, we don't tend to use like one word. So we'll use like Indigenous, we'll use Native, you know what I mean? Like Aboriginal, we'll use a bunch on purpose, just because why make it easy, right?
Yeah, if you don't feel any of these things represent you,
yeah,
it's like,
you're using
how many different words can I use in this interview to say who I am?
Yeah, Native American.
And if you're not going to learn my nation, I'm going to make you learn all these different terms. Yeah. we play with language a lot, though. You know, like again, we like being majority just English speakers. We play with English as much as we can, you know, and everything, every name we put to something has 2, 3, 4 different meanings, and one meaning if you say it to this person, and one meaning if you say it to that one.
Yeah, like on Nation to Nation, like Indian steaks and stuff like that. Like the way like Indian steaks, I don't know, like where I'm from is like fried bologna, right? That's an Indian steak. But Indian steaks, like the way we spelled steaks was like the steak we have in like STAKES, right? So it's like not just having a steak and lamb, but like the steaks that are involved in what we're doing. So there's like, we use language like that.
And I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to let these guys get ready. So is there one last question from the floor?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Tiffany. I also work here with the Smithsonian, so yay, us and stuff. I have 2 questions. Number 1, when are y'all coming through Detroit so that I can make sure I'm home? Just putting that out there. And my other question is, you spoke a little bit about intergenerational connectedness and things like that, and some of the things that you passed down, both, you know, bad and good and stuff like that. I definitely am a little bit familiar with that with my folks, for sure. And they definitely influence my art and whatnot. So I was wondering if there are folks in your family, both alive or have now passed on, that influence your art and how you approach it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. My father passed away almost 8 years ago, and he was a huge influence on like not just my musical taste, but also encouraging me a lot on pursuing like a lot of my musical careers and stuff, and like, you know, bought me a drum kit when I wanted to be in a punk band, you know, and stuff like that when I was 14. Yeah. That was my biggest influence, I guess. Was that the question?
He's got no influences.
I have no influence. None.
I generally refer to myself as an arts brat. The 3rd generation artist. Both my parents are artists. My dad's a photographer named Jeff Thomas, and my mom is an actor named Monique Mojica. My grandmother and my 2 great aunts have the longest consecutively running women's theater company in North America, called Spider-Woman Theater. So I grew up surrounded by people who were working in basically, you know, the trajectory that we're on right now was started by a lot of artists, but a lot of artists that were in my family were heavily involved for, I guess, 50 years now. About.
That's crazy.
So I have that history with my family, and I was kind of no choice for me. I tried to be other things, but it didn't work, and the further I tried to get away from my family and art and all of this, the more it just pulled me back in. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm meant to be doing, I guess.
Yeah, before this, I was teaching Cayuga and on my reserve. So like music was something that, you know, my mom's side had. My grandfather was a really great fiddle bluegrass player, and he's into bluegrass. And my uncles can play guitar and stuff like that. So I've always had this musical like ability. I just never really used it or discovered it till I was about 16. And then when that happened, I just kind of used it. And now that I'm doing it, now my cousins are really are not shy about being musicians and being involved in music. And a lot of them kind of they ask me for advice and help and stuff. And it's pretty cool to see a ripple effect than what I've been doing for the last like little bit. And I was doing hip hop and on the res, which is something that's doesn't ever get done either. But it was really cool. And then now like from my cousins anyways, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Well, you guys, I want to thank you for the time you took to talk with us. Thank you in advance for the shows coming. I want to thank your families because clearly they inspired and supported you guys in your art and your music, which is a great thing for all of us.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah,
Thanks
a lot.
Yeah,
this
thanks
is crazy.
all of you. So we have like about 20 minutes now between now and when the show is going to start. The museum galleries are closed, but you can fan out through the museum. And thank you so much for your very deeply felt and insightful questions. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.